Hello, FinTech leaders and builders. So I'm Vasyl Soloshchuk from Insart, and this is our next episode of Fintech CTO Podcast. And before we start, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and actually let's start. And our today's guest is Martyna Lewinska from FIAT Republic. So hello, Martyna.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us today. So I have prepared very short professional biography about yourself. So I know that you have graduated from University of Science and Technology in Krakow, Poland, and you hold the Master of Science in Automatics and Robotics, which is, I think, pretty important for our conversation as well. You worked in business as business intelligent analyst and also as a cloud engineer in a number of companies. And also you worked for some big companies like Hitachi and General Electric. And at some point of time, you moved to London, as I know, and worked also with some media companies, and eventually moved to fintech and financial services space. And you're with Habito and OpenPaid, and you transitioned to head of platform engineering role, which is more like a management role in OpenPaid. And eventually, you co-founded a new company, FIAT Republic, last year as a co-founder, and as a CTO. And to me, it looks like a very pretty classic technology leader career. Like you have classic engineering education. You worked for some bigger companies in engineering roles. You also transitioned to a management role, as I see with some bigger company, and also you moved to fintech and financial services, and probably you gained some experience working in with banking as a service platforms. And now you co-founded the company, and typically to people who do that, they leverage their expertise in engineering, management, financial services to achieve bigger goals. So, and it always, for me, it's always interesting to explore the milestones, of the career. And so my very first question here, maybe I was wrong with something, but my also question is here. Can you tell us about the day when you actually decided to become a founder and CTO of FIAT Republic?
Oh, that's a tough one, actually. By the way, great biography. You could look into that as a career option. Yes. I think it's a journey, actually. It's not necessarily a moment, a day or something. It's like it grows inside you in a sense that you think that at some point in your life, you would like to do something else. And it starts there, kind of like the seed is there, that you not necessarily want to only build for others, but you also have an idea. You also want to think about coming up with something on your own. And that happens. So for me, it was more about, doing things doing something new, doing something on my own. And, especially with the people that I was building that with, right? I think the people element is always important. And you mentioned something about that I transitioned into the management role, and the people management is something that I'm very, very passionate about. But I would say that it's impossible to be good people manager without actually, first being in the ranks, sort of, and understanding how it looks like from ground up. So for me, I think it was a journey actually to from being an engineer to becoming a co-founder and a CTO. It was always about the journey in between and learning how companies are working. And at some point I realized that, hey, I have actually enough knowledge. I know exactly how different components in a company should look like. I know exactly what needs to be built. I know what type of teams I need to build, what kind of people I want to hire. So for me, that was a clear signal that I'm ready for the next step. And I took that step.
Yeah, great. So look, as I know, you work with Adam Bialy, and I had some discussion with him maybe a few years ago. So how did you meet with Adam?
Oh, we actually worked for the same company for a while. That's how we met, and we instantly clicked. Kind of he was the CPO. I was the head of platform engineering. Obviously, we had many interactions. So that's how we met, and I think he was definitely the person that has a huge impact on me as being the manager as well, and that's how the relationship started.
Yeah, great. So look, before the open paid, as I understand, you didn't have like management positions, like pure management roles. So, and question here is, so why did you decide to transit to management role? So what was interesting for you at this point of time to transit from more engineering hands-on to management?
First of all, I don't believe I was just a manager at that point. I was, especially if you work in a smaller organization, even if you have the title head of, if you're the CTO, you might still be hands-on. I think it all depends on the kind of like state or the step that the company is at. So for me, even though I transitioned into being also a manager, so head of platform engineering, I was still hands-on. And the same applies when I joined the company and co-founded FIAT Republic. Still hands-on in the beginning, right? I'm the type of CTO or the type of engineer that a company needs or people manager at a given time. The ratio of how much time you spend on pure technical tasks and management tasks it depends on the moment, right? So the decision wasn't instant in the sense I woke up and decided, okay, from now on, I don't like cloud, I don't like engineering, I just want to focus on management. So no, it didn't look like that. For me, it was more fluent in that way, liquid. So I saw that there is a need for managing certain aspects, and I decided to take it upon myself, take the ownership of doing that, and that's how it started. So at some point, I'm very much the type of person that I prefer to do than to talk, and for a manager that might be quite weird. And I always keep joking to my engineers that I talk a lot. But I also like doing a lot. So that means that if I see something needs to get done, there are a few ways you can get to it. You can do it yourself, or you can help others do it. You can be there for other people as well. And for me, I found that, that is my great passion as well, to see how other people grow and to see how other people develop in the roles. And I saw that I'm pretty good at it. So I decided to take that step and follow through. But I would never ever, I think, leave the technical part of it as well, because that is kind of like, in a sense, where I come from, because I love technology. I'm very, very passionate about technology, so I don't really want to be too far away from it, because I think if I remove myself completely from all the technical aspects, it's harder to have the good understanding of actually what needs to be done. And as CTO, I need to have that visibility.
Yeah, so talking about the hands-on work and technologies, so what do you think was like the biggest challenge for you, like a cloud engineer, and exactly what helps you in current role? What expertise as a cloud engineer helps you in your current role?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think biggest challenge when I was, the cloud engineer, I think, was convincing that cloud, why pay so much for certain features in the cloud? Because usually everybody wants to set up the cloud, just make it work, and we've got this cool security tool, maybe not worth it. So things like this were probably a challenge. But that taught me a lot. That taught me that very often technology is seen as a cost, and purely just cost, and not necessarily something that brings in value. And being able to explain to others why things are important is a huge part of the job, right? It's a constant hustle between, here's a budget, here's what we need to build, here's how we need to build it. So I think being a cloud engineer, that was probably the biggest one, because if you think about many companies, you'll see that the biggest cost in a company is usually the payroll, and after that very often is the cloud, the infrastructure. In terms what helped me in the beginning is when you're building something new, you have two things that you need to do. First of all, you need to build a product, so you need to have something, but you need to put that something somewhere. So there comes the second part, which is the infrastructure, right? It always comes together. And on top of that, I would say that the fact that I was previously head of platform engineering in a regulated company, that means that I have very good understanding of what are all the other components, what are all the rules that you need to adhere to in order to be able to pass certain certifications, in order to be compliant, and do everything by the book. And so the truth is that if you do certain things the right way from the very beginning, it is much easier than when you suddenly need to start changing after 2-3 years. So I think that was my very big advantage.
So how were you able to sell the IT services, internally to other maybe to clients from the perspective of return on investment? So you mentioned that the budget for IT services, for cloud services, is a big thing, and with all our clients, we see this happening all the time. So why we need this? Why we need this? How we can optimize the cost for infrastructure? And this is always a question. And this is always a process. So maybe some best practices here, how to deal with the budget optimization and selling the idea what services to use and what services not to use.
Definitely. So I think one thing is about understanding what is the new shiny tool, and what is actually the bare minimum, the MVP of your infrastructure. And then explaining, and seriously explaining more through examples, because you might have seen that in many places there is a hack, and suddenly the company is hiring security engineers. So showing examples like this, what happens if you actually don't put the money, if you don't invest into security, into the proper infrastructure, into the proper practices in code development, etc. What is the risk? So making people aware of the risk that cutting certain corners is not really something that you should be doing is the first step, because unfortunately very often I would say people are simply not aware, but because not necessarily everybody is eager to explain, and I think explaining through examples especially helps you a lot. And other thing is the fact that we talk about the cloud, and cloud is this cool thing, you just use the cloud and everything works. It's mainly about understanding as well that, hey, cloud is purely, you need to know networking, you need to know storage, you need to know servers, right? It's still the same thing. It's just wrapped around in a nice product that makes your life much easier. But it means that things can get hacked, things can go wrong, and you need to always have all the measures in place to be able to survive. Whether that is about disaster recovery, whether that is making sure that your client data is secure, because ultimately cloud has the shared responsibility model, and that means that you're responsible for part of it as well. The cloud providers give you the tools. How you use the tools, it is up to you.
Yeah, so great. So look, I mentioned that you have the master science degree in automatics and robotics, and this is sometimes a discussion whether the engineer needs to have the master degree or university degree at all, and especially if you're a CTO, so do you need to have engineering degree? So what's your opinion on this discussion?
Seriously, I think this is more about experience and what you've been doing. So I enjoyed my uni years. I learned a lot, but I would say apart from kind of the pure things, the technical things that I learned at university, it's all about making sure that you're able to work in a group, you're able to manage your own time, you're able to get all the information you need to complete a task. I think those were the most powerful things that were being taught. And you can learn it either from uni or you can learn it on a job, right? So it depends. I would say it's a very individual thing. And personally, when I'm hiring engineers, I don't expect people to have master degree. I don't expect people to have any degree, really. I expect them to have the knowledge, have the experience, and have the right attitude. And with that, you can really rock. So in terms of whether that is a requirement for a CTO, I would go the same way. You can learn things in many different ways. Having a piece of paper to prove it is one way of doing things, but having the piece of paper doesn't really mean that you cut out for the job, right? So it works like this. You can be the best engineer in the world, you can have the best technical knowledge in the world, but if you're not able to apply it, to share it, if you're not able to be a team player, I think ultimately it will be very, very hard to succeed even as an engineer, because you usually work in a group, right? So that's the same here. It's great to have master's degree. I definitely learned a lot, But I would argue that it depends whether this is something for you or not.
Yeah, right. So, when you're a CTO of, especially of the early stage company, so maybe you need to be an engineer, you need to be a business owner, you need to be a project manager. So you wear so many hats. It can be product manager, it can be customer support engineer, sometimes DevOps, QA engineer, maybe solution architect. Yeah, like technically, so many
Can be
different hats.
anything.
Yeah, and so what are your hats at the moment?
Pretty much anything. Like if I think about all the hats since the day we started, it's anything really. But I would say the very I think in one way challenging, but in the other way the most exciting thing about starting from scratch is the fact that you don't really have any other people that can do it certain things for you. So that means if you think about the organization from the high level point of view, you usually have something that is someone that is responsible for data, someone that is responsible for security, for app development, for the product development, for cloud or infrastructure. You have all those different areas, and in bigger organization, it is very clear who is responsible for what. And in the beginning, because you don't have anybody else, that means that one day you're kind of like in charge of the IT, the other day you're dealing with the infrastructure, on the third day you're actually doing something on the app development, and on the next day you're actually, we need to do something with data. So thanks to that, you're exposed to all of the different things. And the beauty of it is that if you see all of those aspects, you have better understanding, and you understand better what are the needs of different teams that you will be growing in the future. And I think right now for me, I'm definitely wearing many hats and trying to make sure that it's, whether that's a tech hat or non-tech hat, honestly, because again, being a CTO in a small startup, that means that you're going to cover many different roles. But I think on the other hand, being co-founder means that you're going to cover all the other roles outside of tech as well. And I think this is also a very new challenge for me to be more on the business side of things, be more, have the holistic view on the whole organization, not just tech. And it teaches you a lot, and I think it provides you this context of how the whole organization is being set up, how the organization works. And ultimately, I think because of that, in the future, it's going to probably help me make better decisions.
So are there any hats that you want to get rid of?
It depends who will be watching. Not really. It's tough to let go, because I do enjoy all the different hats that I'm wearing right now. I'm definitely not the greatest IT person, I think. In general, I'm trying to, be best at that. But no, realistically, I think I do like all my hats, because many of them actually require working with all the people in the company. And I genuinely enjoy that part. So whether that means that from time to time I will need to look at a contract, or I will need to, check out some other things, I don't really want to let go. So it will be tough to let go those things. But no, I enjoy all of those aspects, I would say.
Yeah, so I see there are different scenarios, but for the early stage, for the CTO in the early stage company, I saw these scenarios when you just organically grow. Yeah, so you add more people, more team members, and you delegate some things. Yeah, so you start delegating, and maybe at some point of time you're less a hands-on engineer, less hands-on solution architect or DevOps, or like less, hands-on work engineer, but more a management, leadership, management, planning, strategy, action plans, control, alignment with other functions, other departments, with product, with sales, with marketing. But there are some certain things, and they may be different for different people on every stage of the company, that you just don't want to delegate to somebody. So do you think, what do you think are the most important areas that you would never delegate, even when you grow, to a larger organization?
Stuff that I wouldn't delegate. So I think I would start with the fact that I believe the main thing when you're building a team is making sure that you don't have any bottlenecks. So for me, that means that obviously if I'm around, that means that I'm performing certain things. But if I'm not around, things don't stop. They should continue, normal way. And that's how I structure the team. That's how I try to empower everybody within the team so that they can survive. That's my main goal. I think in terms of not delegating, I think the whole planning part of it, right? So being able to plan ahead and set up, how the different teams should look like. That is something that I wouldn't want to delegate, because I feel this is exactly my area, my kind of like expertise, how to set up those functions from scratch and how to make sure that everything works properly. Everything else, I would say, in terms of being aligned with product, so you always see tech and product all together, right? I truly believe that should be always the case. So the alignment between what the product wants to build and tech, how we are going to build it, that's something that again I want to keep very close to my heart. But then in terms of making sure that however technology is used within the company, it is always helping, right? So because we keep talking always about, of course, if you're a small company, you focus on the product development, but as you grow, you will start notice that okay, product is one thing, then you really need to get benefit from the data in your company. You need to make sure that all the setup in your company is secure, so you have the IT and you have the security teams, and you need to keep kind of like managing all those different teams to make sure that whatever they're building, whatever they're working on, satisfies what the stakeholders need. And I think being the person in the middle and seeing very proactively, okay, sometime like in time, like 6 months from now, we will need this. So right now we need to take steps towards that direction. I think being that person, that is something that I don't think I would like to delegate. And but anything else, I think it's something that the teams should be empowered to build on their own. And as a CTO, I should be the person that is orchestrating and helping and removing obstacles as well. So one part is being the visionary for tech and making sure that we know what is the next big thing that we need to build, and meeting all the expectations from the organization, from everybody in the company. Like technology will be there to solve issues. Technology will be there to support them, not to block them. And then on the other hand, making sure that the different teams are working properly.
Yeah, so by the way, how big is the current engineering team that you have?
11 people, including myself.
And what kind of roles do you have already in your team?
Backend, so we call ourselves software engineers, but we have, if you're talking about specialties, we have backend engineers, front-end engineers, QA, platform.
Okay. Yeah, I read in some on your website actually, and also watched the interview, and you also mentioned that it's very important for the team, to have the culture, the specific culture for the team. And my question here is, you also need to have a culture, but you also need to have processes. Yeah, and you mentioned that you need to have processes, but what do you think is more important actually to build the great software products? To have the right culture or to have the right processes?
I gotta tell you, you ask like very tough questions today.
All right.
I'm crazy about culture and I'm crazy about the processes, so it's a tough call for me. But I would argue that you can build probably more if you have the right culture than when you have the right processes, because processes very often they can evolve from the culture as well. So let's look at, for instance, OE testing. You can have a process and say, when you start developing your feature at some point at the end, this is our process, you're gonna test, right? That can be part of the process. And if you don't move to the next stage. Or it can be a culture as well. So it can be a cultural thing that you see that everybody around you is testing their code. So you're gonna be like, okay, everybody's doing that, I'm gonna do it as well. So the end result is pretty much the same, that the engineer is testing their own code. But the journey, or kind of like what causes, is different, because one is the requirement of the process, the other one is kind of like just looking around and the culture that developed within the technology team. But I would say that the things that evolve organically are easy to maintain, just rather than just giving people a list of things or the list of what they should do, how they should follow it. And especially, I think it would be a different answer for a bigger organization than for a smaller one, because in a smaller one, many things you need to first get the first people together, and then obviously we're going to have some sort of like high level guidelines how we do things, what are the things that we should be really doing, without necessarily making sure that okay, that is the process and you are very strict about it. It's more about let's propose something, and then people take it to themselves, they start working, they start developing features, working on the product, and 3 months from now suddenly you realize that 90% of the people do things in a certain way and are very aligned, and that can become a process, and then it's very clear for everybody, very easy to maintain a process that came to life from the team as opposed to being given to the team.
So as soon as you're recruiting more people, just interesting, will you recruit somebody who is a great engineer but doesn't fit your culture, or maybe some more junior guy but who actually fits your culture very well? So what will be your take here?
The latter one, because I think attitude you can't learn. Attitude is something you either have or not. I think it's much harder to manage someone with the wrong attitude than to actually have someone and teach them on the technical side of things. Ideally, you want someone that has both. So a great engineer with a great attitude, right? And we have those on the team already. So I'm not complaining because we're very lucky. But I think if you are not a good team fit with the current team, I think ultimately in the long run, it's going to cause more problems because it's going to impact the morale, it's going to impact the whole team. And everybody will be like, okay, why is this person here? It's not working. You kind of like, you stop enjoying your work. So I think the moment you stop enjoying things at work, that's the moment that your productivity decreases, that you can be, annoyed a bit, and it's just not working well. So I don't believe it's worth it. And that's why hiring someone that is more junior, but with the right attitude, that means that very likely in a year or two, they're going to be able to grow so much. And like I mentioned before, I personally, I like to help people grow. And I'm very happy that on our team, we already have engineers that are literally begging, can we get more juniors, because we want to teach them. Because if you know something, if you're passionate about what you're doing, you want to spread the word. You kind of like want to share that knowledge. You want to, talk about it with someone. And I think that's where everybody's kind of like eager at some point to work with juniors to help somebody else, like give that passion to somebody else as well, and show them that, hey, this is so cool. So yeah, definitely I would go for the team fit but junior.
Yeah, I totally agree that you need to be patient and you need to like what you actually do and what you build. And you built the platform that bridges the crypto and banking. So tell us a little bit more. So what is Fiat Republic? So what kind of pain points you are trying to resolve, and what kind of solution do you have for the market?
Of course. So we're trying, like you mentioned, bridge banking and crypto. We're trying to make sure that we show to, we aggregate different banking providers on one side, and we provide all those services to crypto companies and only crypto companies, making sure that they do not risk being debanked. So what currently happens very often, if you have a crypto company and they need to have some fiat flows, from one day to the other day, they can get blocked. Just saying, okay, you know what, from today, you're outside of our risk appetite. Unfortunately, we cannot provide you any services anymore. And we want to change that because this is very disruptive. And ultimately at FIAT Republic, we believe that crypto is the future. But in order to get to the next step, we need kind of like the middle ground. So if you think about it, the fiat world is Web 2.0 and the crypto world is Web 3.0. That's why we consider ourselves to be Web 2.5. We're quite in the middle, making sure that as people, go towards crypto, they're able to leverage, their fiat money and fiat flows in order to get onto crypto. And the services that we provide fiat accounts, we provide different rails, we provide different currencies, FX solution as well. And that means that ultimately, if there is a crypto platform that needs to withdraw or deposit fiat money, they can integrate once with us and leverage our whole network.
Yeah, look, so as soon as you're developing the APIs, and this is the nature of your platform, and the APIs are typically used by developers to integrate with your platform into their platforms and vice versa. But in many cases, business people need to do the decision whether to use some solution or not to use some solution. So, and my question here is so what's your strategy? Who are your primary customers here? So are they developers actually who will be integrating with your APIs and using your APIs to build these bridges, or business people who actually need to make the right decisions whether to use your platform or not?
Both. And that's the challenge. Because on one hand, because we are B2B, that means that, and because we rely on the part that we're API first product, right? That means that, who is the customer of our product ultimately? When you think about how we're structuring our API, how we're structuring our endpoints, what kind of questions we ask in technology when we're developing, we're thinking constantly about the engineer on the other side. So we literally, we try to make sure that if we were on the other side, would we even want to integrate with an API like this? And we don't cut corners. Like we always put, the poor engineer on the other side, like, would they be happy with this endpoint? Would they be happy if they were giving this? We constantly think about it, like literally every day, right? So that's the challenge on the technical side of things that in technology we're trying to solve. So have very high standards in terms of like how we're developing our API. And that's one side of things, right? On the other side of things, we need to be fully aware that, especially in the beginning, before the word spreads, it is down to the business people that are going to make the decision whether they want to go with a certain provider or not. However, in the future, this is sort of like the Stripe effect, right? Right now, if you ask many engineers in payments, like, oh, what was the best API you ever integrated with? They're going to be like, Stripe. I want Stripe because it's so good, right? So at some point, if you hold yourself, to those high standards, you're gonna see this kind of like thing when, engineers are gonna be like, okay, I've heard from my friend in a different company that they've integrated with this API and it's so good. We really should use that. So it's gonna come from the engineers talking to their CTOs, talking to their CPOs. This is good stuff. We should use it, right? So that's why there are two plays here, right? One is the kind of like making sure that from the very beginning we have very strong value proposition. That means that convincing the business people, it's not a hassle, right? Because it is so strong. On the other hand, while building, not cutting corners so that we maintain the high standards, and we started on a very, very high note here, and making sure that, 5 months from now, 1 year from now, everybody is going to be like, okay, FIAT Republic's API, that's the way to go. That's how it should be built.
Yeah, by the way, APIs is a tough thing for many developers. And what are the biggest mistakes that can be done when you develop the API from your experience?
So many, to be fair. I think the most annoying one is lack of the idempotency. That kind of like means that if you fail, if you need to replace something, you just cannot. And I think that's one of the things that we provide from day one, right? It is there. I think other thing that is very, very annoying, I think was brought up by many people and for me personally as well, is the lack of proper error management. So the error messages being very confusing. You get this code, but actually it means something else, and you kind of like need to fix, retry, and so on and so forth. So error handling is also a hassle, and the ultimate one, I would say, documentation. That means that if you can't find the answer in the documentation, I mean the structure even of the API. So in one place you're gonna call something address, in another place you're gonna call it like home_address, but it's the same thing in both contexts, right? So why should you use two different names, or two different structures to describe the same thing, right? So making sure that your API is consistent, making sure that if you know half of the API, you could literally close your eyes and you could guess what's in the other half, just knowing the high level name of the endpoint, because it's so predictable. So I think in many cases you feel, that, okay, this part of the API was developed by one team and the other part of the API was developed by a different team. And that means that probably there was a lack of communication between the teams, or it was developed in different times. It's just like there's no the same flow to this thing. So I would say these are the things that show that it was not thought through. So making sure that, so for me personally, lack of documentation is very, very annoying, because you then, or even worse, actually, having mistakes in your documentation. So that means that, okay, you are finished, you think it should be working, you just go with it, and it's not working because it's unexpected behavior that was not described in the documentation. And another one that comes to my mind is actually the differences between environments. And I think this is something that's very common. So you usually develop against somebody's sandbox, and you go to production, and suddenly whatever you develop is not working, because again, on production it is slightly different. There is a slightly different flow that is not described previously. So I think making sure that that experience is seamless, that you can just literally flip a switch and go to production with your code, just supplying, I don't know, production API keys or something like this. That's it. It should be much more of a hassle. Unfortunately, it is the case that it's not happening. Like, people not necessarily think about it. That could be for many different reasons. Sometimes technology is just not number one, and that kind of like you see it further down the road. But I think the fact that I was able, to be in the company from the one, be from the very beginning, and as a co-founder, I have big impact on how we do things as well, and making sure that we have this agreement with the tech team. Okay, we really need to. We have this vision. The vision is like be really the best, and make sure that the standards are there, and it's high standards.
Yeah, you mentioned about the API documentation, and probably if there are there was some kind of miscommunication, yeah, with the situation that you have described within the team. And I personally believe that how the software communicates with each other, yeah, and different pieces of software communicates with each other, it's a reflection of the team structure that you have. And actually, there is a kind of Conway's law that probably you know, and I like to talk about Conway's law a little bit with our guests. And the law states organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structures of these organizations. So, and my question here, so I would like to ask here a question. So do you have the same pattern with the architecture and with team structure in your team? So what's your opinion here?
So because we were growing the past year, so we're still kind of pretty small, right? That means that we have, I would say, the best communication we can have in an organization. We're like one bigger team. We communicate constantly, but we're trying to make sure from the very beginning that depending, like either whether you are on front end or back end or doing something else, the information stays somewhere. It is being shared. So it is not something that disappears. It is something that, we believe very strongly in asynchronous type of work as well. So I think we have very, very strong communication. That's why you'll definitely see how if you were to check out our API, you're going to see how solid it is, right? I do agree with that statement because, and it's not only true for APIs. It's only true for computer systems. I think it's true for how the company as a whole operates. Because sure, we can very, very easily see how that reflects when you're building software, because you can see, as an example, let's see you've got a backend team and frontend team because somebody decided to split it that way, and backend is developed in one way, frontend in another way, and at some point they're supposed to start talking to each other somehow, like it's supposed to work, but they have not been really communicating with each other at all. You're gonna see the lack of communication in the ways things have been developed, because you're gonna see that maybe along the way the front-end engineering could have asked for something else and the back-end engineering could have provided that, and it would have worked better, right? So I think definitely it is true, but so far we have been lucky enough because we have great communicators in the team, and that means that no decisions are made by one person. No, nothing. Everything is a discussion. Everything is with the right questions being asked in the middle of the discussion, and everything is kind of like put out to also voting, so making sure that we make the right decision. We don't rush. The important decisions are not rushed, to the extent that it is sometimes better to make the decision at the very last minute, kind of like push it a bit, than to make the decision right now, because with the decision what often comes is constraints as well, and you don't really want to constrain yourself very early on. So that's how I see it in our team. Like I said, like great communicators, and because we're like one bigger team, we don't yet face that problem of, let's say, completely separate teams that don't talk to each other. But I think it comes down not only to how you structure the teams, how you structure the organization, but also what is the culture. So if you have the culture that communication is important, and you put a lot of pressure on people being good communicators, it is going to pay off.
You mentioned about the decisions that you need to make, yeah, and So, what are the major decisions that you were able to make building the product from scratch now that actually you were not able to make working in the previous companies because they already had some legacy product, some teams in place? So, what are the major decisions that you are eventually were able to make, and you think these are like a good decisions, like a big, like a foundation for the next years of the product and of the company?
Of course. So things like choosing the cloud provider, very often it is decided for you, and there are reasons why you go with one cloud provider over the other one. In terms of building the application, very being able to decide that, hey, we're not gonna start with 20 microservices. We're gonna start with like a slightly bigger monolith. So you can call it microservice because it is its own entity, and maybe 3 microservices that actually we know that they're completely separate. It makes sense, right, to separate, but only for the purpose so that your CI/CD is set up in the right way. You have the good processes in place. You are able to develop different parts of code separately. So not going into 20 microservices from the very beginning, which unfortunately very often happens. But on the other hand, not going into, oh, let's have one monolith and let's develop and think only about our local environment, and if it works on a local, it's cool. So being able to introduce already correct flow into app development and with different environments, with segregation of environments, that is something that's very often not there. But again, that is a decision that I could have made in the beginning. And deciding on things like, okay, are we going to use RabbitMQ? Are we going to use Kafka? Are we going to use something else? So this type of things are decided very early on. And we get to choose. The same goes for choosing what kind of database we're going to use, and so on and so forth. So I think being able to impact those things and using the experience and actually choosing the components so that they are used in the best way for the product that you're building, but not only because you like that technology. I think that's the most powerful thing, and I think that shows like how mature our technology team is. Because I think very, very often, unfortunately, we like toys. Like, let's face it, like there's this new tool, let's just use it, let's just see how it works. It's amazing.
Okay.
And you go for it, right? So being able kind of like at some point you reach this point when you're kind of like, okay, does it make sense? And going towards the direction where you're asking yourself, what kind of business problems am I solving? And just solving the problems in the best possible way. So when you get to that point, that's where you want to be when you're building something from scratch, because that allows you to make the best decisions along the way.
So do you believe that these decisions will allow you not to be killed by the technical debt, like in 1-2 years, like it happens with many companies that build something from scratch, but then they need to deal with the technical debt in a year and 2 and 3?
Of course. So I think other thing is what technical debt. That's a very, very big discussion. So being aware that it's there, and it is there from the moment you write the first line of code. That your first line of code becomes the future technical debt. That is the true thing. So being able to recognize that at some point you will need to put pause button and you will need to refactor parts of the code. You will need to rewrite something at the right time. So kind of like putting on a scale, okay, this is the kind of like our things that we need to deliver from the business perspective. This is the impact. What will happen if we actually don't refactor parts of the code? And you need to constantly put it on scale, constantly measure what is more important, and choose the right time to actually pay off the debt and keep paying off the debt continuously. And don't forget. So for us, for instance, it's very, very important that even if we make a decision and we know for some reason that, okay, we could have done it like slightly different, it has no impact on the customer, right? Of course, it's more like our hustle. Then you just make sure that we make a note, we take a very conscious decision, but we always come back to it. So we know that, okay, till not necessarily this week, but perhaps in 2 months or a month from now, we're gonna definitely come back to the ticket. We have our technical debt kind of like board for that, and we're gonna dust it off. We're gonna make sure that it's not infinitely increasing. So keeping that under wraps, it's very important. So I think it's about like, let's not lie to ourselves. Like, if you develop any software, you're gonna have technical debt, and technology is moving so fast all the time that to say that it's not gonna be there, it's like, no, it will be always with you.
So Am I right that you have like more organic strategy for eliminating the technical debt and re-engineering, like the re-engineering strategy going forward when you spend some portion of the team efforts to deal with some architecture, structuring, re-engineering? So is it more organic or what? How do you see that?
So it's planned in a way that there is always track record of what we need to pay back, literally in the technical debt. So we know exactly what we need to pay back. We know exactly what is the impact if we don't do it. And at the right time, we are able to choose, okay, let's pay it back. Let's take this, and that, and actually sort it out. But it's something that on ongoing basis, it's being looked at. So even if we have like planning for product, from time to time, we're going to bring up the technical debt ticket just to make sure, okay, now is the right time to pay this one back, because maybe we're touching this part of the code and it makes sense to kind of like link those things together and sort it in one go. Because if you're looking at one part of the code and you're kind of like in your zone, you know every line of it by your heart, and you're already kind of like, or maybe you're changing flows in that part, changing one additional thing and refactoring and paying off the debt makes sense. So for us, it's also about prioritizing in a way and choosing the right moment for paying off this particular technical debt, let's call it like this. Because just saying, okay, we're going to close the shop for 3 months and we're going to deal with everything, it is probably not going to work, because it might be more effort to do it that way.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, certainly. So look, back to the FIAT Republic platform. I read something about the FIAT Republic consortium that you have, and it looks like a community of the clients and partners that you have. So can you tell us a little bit more details how it works technically and from the business perspective?
Of course. So from the business perspective, the moment you become our client, so the moment you become our member, you become a member of our consortium. That means that you can benefit, the network, benefit the fact that you belong right now to a consortium, and we can represent you. In a way, that means that our interests are aligned in the sense that we want to make sure that, the compliance is very, very strong in each of our members. So if you are a member of our consortium, that means that you passed our onboarding, that means that you passed all of our compliance checks, that means that your compliance is at a certain level. And you can benefit those facts to your advantage. You can also, make sure that you are giving enough insights in terms of like, what is the next thing that should be there for crypto in terms of like, whether that is legislation, whether that is regulation, what is the next thing that can help from compliance point of view to bring crypto to the masses, right? So it is creating the space for the community to talk about certain topics.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, how many clients and members that you already have on your platform?
Of course. So we've signed multiple clients so far, and many of our clients already went live, and we're growing and building a lot right now. So I think for us, it just never stops. And we have, if you look at our roadmap as well, it's just never ending. If you look at our, sales pipeline, it's never ending. And I think it's all about building the momentum as well. So making sure that, you make the right noise, you get to the right people, and you don't let go, in the sense that you just don't stop. Like, you celebrate the success, but you move on to the next one. You move on and you keep kind of like pushing, because the moment you stop, it's like you're gonna see that, okay, that's, first of all, that's not why we're here. I think there's so many things to be done in the crypto space that you just need to constantly be on the lookout and making sure that you're able to bring the right value to your customers. So the moment you learn that, okay, 90% of our customers need this, and that, you just go ahead and you build it for them, right? So that never ends.
So your members, they are like crypto exchanges, crypto platforms, and banks. Is it correct?
So banking providers, let's look at like a two-sided network. On one side, you've got the banking providers, and on the other side, you've got the crypto platforms, and we're in the middle. That's how you can look at us. So our members, the members of the consortium, these are crypto platforms.
Yeah, and for, my question here, for all the platforms that we see on the market, you need to add members from one side, you need to add members from other side, and sometimes you're more successful with adding members from one side than from another side. So for yourself, so what is the biggest challenge, to add more crypto platforms or to add more banking services providers?
I would say it's the reason we exist is the fact that cryptos don't have access to the right banking providers. So definitely that is the bigger hustle to be able to get this one. But I think
Mhm.
with the right push and with the right, let's say, focus, you are able to deliver. You need to be very straightforward. You need to know exactly who you're looking for. You need to know that, hey, we are working with crypto platforms and these are our clients, and be straightforward about it, but also making sure that you show that, hey, we are strong on compliance. I think this
Mhm.
changes kind of like how the conversation goes. So it's always much harder to find the right banking providers, and that is precisely why we exist. So we want to make sure that we are able to aggregate all the crypto-friendly banking providers, and we're able to leverage that and give it to our clients in one package that is, beautifully packed, and also with a great API on top of it.
All right. So maybe my last question here will be: so what do you think will be the biggest challenge for Fiat Republic going forward, and how do you think you will be able to overcome this challenge during the next couple years?
Of course, keep up the pace. I would say that's the biggest challenge because we started and we built things very quickly with very high standards, but that great takes great effort as well. So I think the biggest challenge is making sure that you hire the right people at the right time and you maintain, your people together. So I think this is always the biggest challenge for any company. So, and we know exactly what we want to build. We listen to our members, and just making sure that we are able to bring to life all the great ideas that we have. That's the main thing.
Okay, yeah, great. So, well, I see that you know your goals and you know how to achieve them. And Martyna, so thank you very much. And it was a great talk today. And thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, and I wish you to build a strong bridge between crypto and banking space. And for everyone who is watching us, so please like this video and subscribe to our channel and tell us what you think about payment APIs and about the crypto platforms and integrations in the comments below. It was Martyna Lewinska and it was me, Vasyl Soloshchuk. And thank you for watching us today. And stay tuned, stay healthy, and see you in our next episode of Fintech CTO Podcast. Bye bye.